So the early years of the Trump administration focused on hunting down and punishing leakers that provided reporters with details of Trump associates' contacts with Russia. This is according to the New York Times. And they are reporting that those efforts included forcing the Justice Department to secretly obtain personal information of Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee and their families. Prosecutors, this is a quote from the reporting. Prosecutors subpoenaed Apple for data from the accounts of at least 2 Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee, aides and family members. One was a minor. The records of at least a dozen people tied to the committee were seized in 2017 and early 2018, including those of Representative Adam B. Schiff of California. Representative Eric Swalwell of California said in an interview Thursday night that he had also been notified that his data had been subpoenaed. Now, after the DOJ under Jeff Sessions failed to connect the leaks to Dems, they considered dropping it until William Barr took over a year later. Quote, William P. Barr revived languishing leak investigations after he became Attorney General a year later. He moved a trusted prosecutor from New Jersey with little relevant experience to the main Justice Department to work on the Schiff-related case and about half a dozen others, according to 3 people with knowledge of his work who did not want to be identified discussing federal investigations. Now, AG William Barr's involvement has caused some to remember this dishonest exchange with Senator Kamala Harris over his Justice Department being asked to start investigations. Let's take a look.
Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question?
I will repeat it.
Yeah.
Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation, but
perhaps they've suggested.
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted.
I don't know.
Inferred. You don't know.
No, he doesn't know. The zeal in the Trump administration's efforts to hunt, this is a quote directly from the reporting, the zeal in the Trump administration's efforts to hunt leakers led to the extraordinary step of subpoenaing communications metadata from members of Congress, a nearly unheard of move outside of corruption investigations. And this is more from the reporting. Moreover, just as it did in investigating news organizations, the Justice Department secured a gag order on Apple that expired this year, according to a person familiar with the inquiry. So lawmakers did not know they were being investigated until Apple informed them last month. Lance and Cenk, there's a lot in this story, but I want to take a pause here to get your thoughts on what's being reported.
So I just want to ask the right wingers first. I just want to be clear, right? Because a lot of them are defending this. Oh, well, we had to spy in on our political opponents and we had to spy in on members of the media because earlier there were stories about how New York Times and other reporters were also spied in on by Donald Trump. Oh, okay. So does that mean we can now spy on Republican politicians and Fox News hosts? I just want to be clear because I want to be, just fair to everybody. Because if you're defending Trump on this, I assume that we can look into, well, maybe even you guys, if you're a right winger, maybe we could just now ask Apple, why don't you just give me their phone records? Because they love when the government, big government, spies in on Democrats. They love it when they spy in on reporters they don't like. So I'm just wondering. Inquiring minds want to know. That's all, Lance.
Well, I mean, I know Trump's always getting compared to Nixon for reasons like this, and not just because like he secretly hates the Jews or likes to say the N-word in private or anything like that. But I think it's more about people trying to utilize their power and exert it in times where they probably are going well beyond the bounds of what is acceptable. And I think that was the case with Trump, right? We saw time and time again, there were so many different opportunities for Trump to try and basically... No, sorry. I don't know what that was. But sorry, for Trump to try and utilize the tools at his disposal in order to try and either maintain or coalesce power.
Yeah, my favorite, of course, was the clip, Ben. I mean, when she's like, because look, right wingers probably don't understand anything about the law, right? So the Justice Department is supposed to be independent. It's not supposed to be political. So there are plenty of things inside the government that are political. Makes sense, and that's when we make fun of politicians when they say, "I don't want to politicize this." Of course you do. You're a politician, right? But there are some things that are supposed to be independent, because if they're not independent, we wind up being in a police state, a fascist state, an authoritarian government. Actually, the thing that right-wingers are the most scared of, Tucker Carlson always telling you, Democrats are gonna make you do this. They're gonna make you drink Starbucks every day. They're gonna make you do all these crazy things, right? By the way, he literally said that Biden's gonna make you drink Starbucks every day. Okay, so
wait, that's the thing? That's not a meme?
Yeah, I know, right? Is that amazing? Oh. Yeah, no, he literally said that. And because progressives love giant corporations, and so we're gonna make you drink their coffee every day. Anyway, so in a situation like that, you have to make sure in all situations that the Justice Department is not politicized. That's the one thing that definitely should not be politicized. Otherwise, they're gonna start. Because they arrest people. They have the FBI under them. They have the attorney general, obviously. They have all the district attorneys, etc. If you use the force of the law against your political opponents or your media opponents, then we're no longer a democracy. So that's why when Kamala Harris asked Barr, did the White House ever ask you to investigate anybody? He's like, well, what do you mean by words? Because of course they did. And now we find out, yeah, they asked him, I don't like those reporters, go investigate them. I don't like those politicians, Adam Schiff, lazy Adam Schiff, or whatever anti-Semitic thing he had for him, right? He's like, just go find out. If he's got kids, grab their phones, do whatever you want with them. By the way, the ostensible reason for this is we're so worried about leaks. The Trump administration leaked like a sieve, not just against them, but also in favor of them. By the way, this is true of Republicans and Democrats. They do positive leaks that make them look positive all the time. Those are never investigated. Never, ever, ever. It doesn't matter if they're top secret, national security, etc., right? But if anyone ever leaks against them, oh my God, I'm so concerned about national security, right? And in this case, what had gotten leaked was Trump told the Russians in the White House, don't worry, I'm firing James Comey. You won't have to worry about that problem anymore. Okay, by the way, fake lefters now come in and go, Russiagate, I can't believe you mentioned the word Russia. Look into the story, that's what happened. And so I don't know why Trump wanted to make sure that the Russian ambassador was relieved that he wanted to get rid of our FBI director. But when people found out about that, Trump was furious and was ready to break any law to make sure that whoever told the Americans that he told the Russian ambassador that he would basically do his bidding for him inside our White House, that he would find them and punish them. Now, of course, the good news is Donald Trump and his infinite incompetence investigated all these people and still couldn't find the leaker.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever.
That was actually Tucker Carlson. That is not edited.
No, that really did catch me off guard. But I guess it's as ridiculous as him actually saying it, and this is the scale, the scope of. I think it's the juxtaposition that really gets me. The absurdity of what is important to conservatives versus what's not important. And it really hinges upon who's it in favor of. If it's overreach by the government and it's in favor of their political ideology, they're totally fine with it. If it's overreach and it's having to do with them not being able to pick up a gun at a drive-thru at a Wendy's, then they have a problem with it. And so that's really the hypocrisy. But I think it's absolutely, at this point, it's baked into the system. And I think Democrats either are oblivious to it or they're complicit with it. And I'm leaning more and more and more that they're complicit with this versus just ignorance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone on the left who obviously is not really a fan of the institutions of either the CIA or the FBI, but I do find it kind of unique how loyalties seem to flip depending on what's happening, right? Like I remember a lot of Republicans used to despise WikiLeaks and thought they were traitors, and then all of a sudden WikiLeaks was revealing Hillary Clinton's emails, and so now WikiLeaks is a patriotic institution, stuff like that. I think the same thing applies in this case when we're talking about either the DOJ, what have you. If Trump's doing it, it was okay. Then it was completely fine, right? Because he was basically trying to weed out corruption. He was trying to drain the swamp. But if it goes in the opposite direction, then this is just a dramatic overreach of government power.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And unfortunately, once folks are into a particular camp, they can't see straight. So the facts no longer matter. So they're like, Trump good. By the way, I mean, there's another classic example. The Republicans hated Russia, and they used to accuse people on the left of, being lackeys for the Russians, even after they stopped being the Soviet Union. And they were like, who cares? Who cares now that?
Or North Korea. Don't forget about that too.
Oh yeah, North Korea is an even better example. Thank you, Lance. Right? So they went from North Korea is the worst communist dictatorship, et cetera, which by the way is true. Okay, they don't do communism, but they're an awful dictatorship. And but then Trump literally said that he fell in love with Kim Jong-un, and they wrote love letters to one another. And now the right wing turned around. North Korea is the best. Communism's awesome. I mean, is there any bigger hypocrisy than that, right? Now they're giant Russia fans and et cetera. Now, guys, the reality is, just look at the facts, right? So in the case of Russia, should you be against the Russian people? Of course not. Why would anybody be against any kinds of people, right? The question is, how's their government, right? So I always use Turkey as an example because I'm Turkish American. So like the current right-wing government of Turkey is led by Erdogan. Not a big fan, okay, because he's right-wing and I'm not. And I think he's done abuses that I'm against. That doesn't mean I hate Turks, okay? That doesn't make any sense. So in the case of Russia, you could say, Vladimir Putin, a giant right-winger, authoritarian, horrible leader of Russia. That doesn't mean we should invade Russia. That doesn't mean that you need to switch your position or whatever it is. And you just have to look at the facts. Here, I'll give you one last example, FBI, right? So as Lance pointed out, historically, the FBI and CIA have not exactly been fans and friends and allies of the left, right? And certainly all across the world, the CIA did coups and so many other ways to disrupt leftist governments that were actually trying to look out for the people of their countries and keep their natural resources, et cetera. And then the FBI was awful to the civil rights movement, to any progressives. J. Edgar Hoover was a monster of monsters. FBI was one of the worst organizations in American history. But these days, the FBI is an interesting mixed bag. And so sometimes when they do thin blue line and protect police when they're not doing the right things, or law enforcement when they're not doing the right things, we criticize them. But they've actually done a pretty good job of stopping a lot of white supremacist terrorist attacks. And I give them credit for that. Why? Am I switching teams and now I love the FBI? No. Credit where credit is due and discredit where discredit is due. It's not that hard. You just have to not be ideologically rigid. And in a particular camp, I don't know, I have a cult of personality, and that talk show host or that political leader told me I'm either pro-FBI or I'm anti-FBI. I'm either pro-Russia or I'm anti-Russia. And all the baggage that comes with it. No, just please, I'm begging you to use your mind.
Cenk, I used to believe, no, I still believe everything that you just said. I used to think that there was a limit to how far conservatives would go with their hypocrisy or willingness to switch sides based on how it benefits them politically. But after January 6th, and then after just different figures on the right got blacklisted or the no-fly list, it seemed like they're now really willing to turn on America itself, on democracy itself. Like they're like, we love America, but if the power structure of America is not going to benefit us, then down with democracy seems to be the next move of some conservatives. I was wondering what you thought about that.
Well, Ben, real quick on that. That's an interesting one where I think they have been relatively consistent, but with a mirage of marketing, okay? So let me explain what I mean. I think conservatives in this country never believed in democracy. They wore the flag and they carried the Bible and they did all the trappings and the marketing of being patriotic. But they always preferred to have their power rather than equality and justice. So in the South, they said, oh, we love democracy, but not for black people. America's for equality, but not for black people. We're gonna keep them as slaves, right? Well, then you're obviously not for equality. Period. That's the most obvious thing in the world. You're obviously not for justice. You're obviously not for the things that America theoretically stands for. And then they were so adamant about that they declared war on America because they said we would rather have our power than America. Fact, there's no disputing it, right? And then during the Jim Crow era, for 100 years, they said, we don't care what the federal laws are. We don't care what America wants. Down here in Mississippi, we're gonna do what we want. We're gonna break the federal law all the time and screw America and screw justice and equality. We're gonna keep black people down. We're not gonna let them vote. We're gonna do poll tax. We're gonna do lynchings. But what is lynchings? What is cross burning? It's terrorism. It's to terrorize the population. Talked about this on a recent show. In the Tulsa massacre, there's still folks alive today who lost family members, and they still don't want to talk about it because they were so terrorized that if they ever mentioned it out loud, that they too would be lynched, right? So did those folks for that extra 100 years after the Civil War, did they believe in equality and justice in the American way? No, they despised it. So now when I see them arguing for, yes, that Trump should abuse his power, screw democracy, if he didn't win, let's storm the Capitol and take it by violence, that actually is the conservative tradition in America.
I don't think you even have to look that far back in the past, though. Like, just look at modern day voter registration laws and the ones that are trying to be passed, right? Like those disproportionately target, Black Americans, Indigenous Americans. I mean, like my mother's Indigenous in Canada, and like we can't fathom how your system works, where people have to wait in line for like 9 hours to vote. That is absurd to me. It takes me less than 5 minutes, and it always has in elections, right? Whereas I hear these stories of people in America, they have to line up all day, and like now they're not allowed to be given food. They're not allowed to be given water because that's considered to be somehow infringing on democracy, where it's disproportionately affecting people who are marginalized.
And they have no shame about it.
Yeah.
And Ben's right, no shame. They're trying to take away people's voting rights right now, today, while pretending to be in favor of democracy. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.